Thank you. Closed captioning will also be provided. In order to ensure that everyone can clearly hear our presenters and avoid any technical difficulties, I'll be muting everyone once we get started here. But just to be on the safe side, I'd appreciate it if you'd also mute yourself by pressing *# or the mute feature on your phone. Please share your questions in the Q&A pod. Any questions that David and I aren't able to field at the end of the presentations, we'll be sure to get answers and feedback on and share with you. Again, after the webinar, we'll share the recording, the closed captioning transcript, as well as all the presentation materials, and those will also be available in the file pod at the end of the webinar, and that'll be on your left-hand side of your screen. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll hand it over to David to introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Jessica. We appreciate the Iowa Coalition for Integrated Employment and all of their efforts to leverage resources and services with Employment First and the Disability Employment Initiative grant that helps Iowa keep things moving forward. So thank you, Jess and Amy, for your work. I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers. We're going to have Ellen Condon lead us off. And Ellen, many of you will be familiar with, as she's been to Iowa several times, has worked with us since the beginning of our Employment First efforts. She's been working with us as a subject matter expert through the Office of Disability and Employment Policy. In her project coordinator for the Rural Institute on Disabilities through the University of Montana in Missoula, Montana. And she has brought a wealth of experience to Iowa in terms of how do we work with school-to-work programs, linkages to businesses and employment, knowledgeable about Social Security work incentives, natural supports, and we've certainly been able to capitalize on her knowledge and expertise as it relates to customized employment and discovery. Today we've asked Ellen to share a little bit about discovery, how we use discovery to create employment opportunities, some of the differences in approaches of why discovery could be used versus traditional methods, and some tips of how we might be able to benefit from those services here in Iowa. After Ellen's done, we'll transition to Ashlea Lantz. Ashley's the employment coordinator for Candeo, which is a service provider here in central Iowa. She's being brought back by popular demand. She had shared some information last month, and we're going to ask her to expand a little bit more on that and give her a little time to share some of her experiences and opportunities that they've had working with customized employment. So Ellen, thank you for joining us and being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, David, and welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope it's drying out in your northwest Iowa corridor there. Today, like David said, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about discovery and how discovery helps you develop your plan for employment and where you might use discovery. But if we start with thinking about discovery as a strategy that helps us identify who a job seeker is through a very optimistic, respectful process. And discovery, I'm going to point out some differences between the strategy of discovery and maybe some alternative strategies that we've used to try to get to know job seekers traditionally. But one of the major features of discovery is that you can't fail discovery. We're not going to evaluate people. We're not going to measure them. We're not going to predict success or failure. Through the process of discovery, we're going to get to know a job seeker very comprehensively in terms of what they can do. Because in customized employment, you're going to be developing a one-of-a-kind position for this individual. And so as the job developer, you're going to need to know what this person can bring to an employer. You're going to need to know what you need to negotiate and create on their behalf. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that as a job developer is to really get to know them in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what their talents are, what their skills are, and really have a good sense of what kind of support needs they have and how to meet them. And so through discovery, we determine people's strengths and their needs and interests, but we go more in depth than we do frequently when we first get to know a job seeker. The end result is that we're going to have a picture of who this person is. But how we're going to get there isn't by asking them questions and doing just an interview of them. We need to spend time with them in environments where they're at their best, where they're most comfortable. Interview people who have a different picture of who they are. And as the facilitator of discovery, we're going to bring all that information together and turn that into a picture of what this person needs in terms of employment. And so it's similar to how we get to know somebody in more traditional employment strategies, but somebody who needs the process of discovery and needs that intense process of discovery, we're going to have to dig a little deeper because it's not going to be real obvious initially what they're going to be successful at and what that job's going to look like for them. So even though discovery is a more informal process versus a structured formal evaluation, it's very strategic, and we're going to plan how we spend time with the person, where we spend time with them, in order to get the information we're going to need as the job developer. And so the information that you have to have that sets up your plan for employment are these 5 areas. And the first one is think about the ideal conditions this person needs to be successful in employment. This might mean the type of tasks, it might be the type of work environment, it might be times of day, it might be the level of, audit distractions or stimulation, it might be presence or absence of coworkers. For some people, they need a higher level of socialization as they're working. Some people are really distracted by that. But we want to be able to identify what this person needs to be successful in their job. And it's not that we're looking for the dream job. We just want to promote somebody to be successful, meaning that they're going to be independent, they're going to be as participating as possible, and they're going to be motivated to work. So the second area that we're going to be looking for are interest areas, preference areas, motivations, or vocational themes. And so for some of the people that need discovery, we need to determine what's going to motivate them to actually go to work and participate in work. Many of the job seekers that we may come across don't have much experience with money. And so going to work for a paycheck may not be what motivates them. So through discovery, we need to figure out why would they participate in these tasks? Why would they want to go to this environment? And what do we need to do in terms of negotiating structure of tasks and work environment and supports that enables these people to be as participating and contributing as possible? The next piece that we need to identify for each job seeker is what are they going to contribute to the employer, especially if we're going in and creating a one-of-a-kind position. We need to be able to talk to the employer about this employer will bring these skills, these personality attributes, these qualifications, and these experiences. And for many of the job seekers who need discovery, those contributions aren't going to be real evident if we do a more standardized vocational assessment or traditional testing. They can contribute and what their skills are. The next area is that we need to have a list of tasks that we're going to offer an employer that this job seeker can do for them. And again, that's going to come from our discovery activities. The final section that's really, really helpful in customized employment and you're looking for in the process of discovery are what kind of connections to the community and community members does this job seeker have? Because, you know, if you think about it, most of us get our jobs through people we know. And so we want to tap into the job seeker and or their families or their social networks connections so that we can leverage those in terms of creating a job and approaching employers. Because most of us, and you know, a lot of the folks who use voc rehab services or employment services will get a job just through help wanted ads. There will be a job opening, they'll apply for that job, they'll interview, submit their resume, and they'll be the most qualified person and get the job. Folks who need discovery aren't going to be successful this way. And so in contrast, what we're going to do is we're going to identify their skills, their tasks, their contributions, because we need to be able to approach an employer and represent this person and present a proposal of how this individual can be a benefit to their business's bottom line. And we're going to negotiate a one-of-a-kind position. So the job seeker or a job developer on the job seeker's behalf is going to initiate this relationship with an employer instead of responding to a help wanted ad. And so the employer is going to react to the presentation. And then you're also, in conjunction with the employer, going to be looking at unmet needs. Now, one major difference in this type of job development than our more traditional job development is that we're building a relationship with an employer here. And this is probably going to take a couple meetings. When you're doing customized job development, you're probably not going to land the job on the first meeting, nor do you want to, because you're representing somebody who needs some flexibility. And you also want to make sure that the job that's being created is meeting the needs of the employer, because it's got to win for the job seeker as well as the employer, otherwise it's not going to be long-lasting. So when do we use discovery? We can all use discovery to help identify situations and work settings that will be a better match for us. So think of discovery as a continuum. For those of us who might benefit from discovery, we might use a little bit of discovery and self-reflection about what's worked for us in the past, what motivates us, where would we be at our best to be most successful. And then there's other folks who may have a real complex impact of disability, who when we first meet them, we're really stumbling about, gosh, you know, what can this person do for employment? Or if somebody needs some flexibility, maybe there's some cyclical mental health issues, maybe this person is very medically fragile, and so we have to design employment around them and around their health needs. Or for whatever reason, we need to be more flexible. Those people might lie on the upper end of the continuum of discovery. They need discovery in order to be employed. And so when we're thinking about what we're learning in discovery, a lot of our job seekers come to us with histories, and maybe they haven't been too successful in the past with employment. We don't want to use that history against them. We want to take a new look at this person and go in with the assumption that maybe we just didn't know everything we needed to know before. And when the job seeker wasn't successful, maybe that's because we didn't do adequate discovery and we set them up for failure. So we want to really understand people's impact of disability, what worked and what didn't work. And again, we're looking for information that will help set them up for success on the job. We're not looking at their dream job. Many folks that we work with disabilities don't have a lot of opportunities to work. If they go out and they get their first job and something happens and they lose it, many of the job seekers that you guys will come across won't get another opportunity too soon. So we've really got to be calculating and strategic as we look at getting to know them and placing folks in the community. The information that we're collecting in discovery is going to be real factual information. We're not going to evaluate. We're not going to compare this job seeker against a set of standards. We're going to collect information about who they are and be real descriptive and factual about it. And this is information that already exists about this person. And why we want to do that is that when you look at factual information, like how somebody uses their hands if they have a mobility impairment, or what their stamina is, how they communicate, instead of using that information to screen them out of employment, what we want to do is use that information to calculate where they're going to be at their best. If somebody uses an augmentative communication device to communicate, and part of who they are is they're always interacting with people, possibly telling people jokes using their augmentative communication device. We know this person's motivated to interact, but as we're spending time with them, we realize when they have to create a novel message, it takes a while to navigate through that whole computer system. So instead of saying, let's not put this person anywhere near customer service, let's say instead we can redefine that impact of disability and say, wow, this person would probably be stellar in an environment where there was some predictable communication opportunities and phrases or information or questions to ask customers, and he'd be great in that role. So that's why we don't want to look at just limitations and screening people out. We want to understand people's complexity of disability so we really understand how they can make the most contribution and be most successful. And the information that we gather about an individual isn't going to predict success. We're assuming success. Again, there's no failing discovery. Discovery is going to give us a picture of what environments are most likely to be a good success for somebody. It's going to give us information about their ongoing support needs and best strategies to meet those needs. Discovery is going to give us an idea of what needs to be in place in an environment naturally for the person to be least dependent on ongoing formal supports, such as a paid support person. So we're not going to use discovery to answer questions about what's the job title for the individual, or are they going to be competitive? Because most of the times you're using discovery because the person isn't going to be competitive. A competitive job development strategy isn't going to be successful for them. They will be competitive in the terms that they will be in paid employment, as many hours as work for them. And you're also not going to use the discovery to identify whether or not somebody needs ongoing support. Instead, what you'll get from discovery is a description of what types of ongoing support strategies will enable the person to be most independent and competent on the job. So some of the answers you're going to get from discovery may be a little different than what you have looked for before with a more formal evaluation. And the characteristics of discovery are that it's optimistic. You can't fail. It's going to talk about how this person can succeed in employment. It's going to be comprehensive in that we look at activities across the person's entire life. It might be looking at what they do at home in terms of chores and responsibilities, where they go in the community, who they know, what they do there, because we're going to translate some of that information into things that motivate the person, skills the person has, skills they can bring to an employer, And each person's process of discovery is going to look real different depending on what's critical for them. If somebody's got some barriers around verbal communication, we want to understand that. So there's going to be different people we talk to in different environments we spend time with the individual. If somebody's got medical issues, we need to understand that impact of disability. And again, discovery is non-judgmental. I want to paint a picture of where this person's going to be successful, not identify all the reasons they won't be successful. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to gloss over any of the individual's challenges. If somebody's got some behavioral challenges, I need to understand what supports they need that minimize those challenges, what environments were those behavioral issues to occur in would not lose them their job. And so it's not that we're going to disregard anything negative. We're going to understand it so that we can support the person to be successful. And when you read a vocational profile, you'll find that its narrative is much more robust, possibly, than some of the other traditional reports that you've read when you're asking for somebody to be evaluated. And so again, particular job titles aren't going to be identified. We're going to identify tasks. We're going to identify themes. So where people might be most motivated it might be an industry, but it's not going to be a particular job title because you're going to create that job title. And you're going to describe somebody's performance and support needs rather than rate them or compare them. And so think about discovery for each individual as needing to put together the pieces of the picture of who they will be at their most successful job. And going back to those 5 categories about the ideal conditions, contributions, interests and motivations, tasks, and connections to employment. And so as you meet each new job seeker that's been referred for discovery, you have to figure out for that individual who holds those pieces of the puzzle. Where are you going to find that piece of information? Is it going to be through spending time with the person at their home? Is it going to be participating in an activity that the person's really familiar with? Or is it going to be participating in an activity that the person is motivated to participate in, but it's a brand new area for them? And as the person who's facilitating discovery, you're going to figure out what makes sense for those activities for that individual. And the skills and the tools that you use in discovery, you don't need a higher degree to do discovery. You know, I think it's very helpful to understand how employment in the community that's negotiated can look for job seekers. But if you have someone who's good at talking to to other folks, doing some interviews, drawing out factual, descriptive information, observing people, so spending time just watching what somebody does and capturing that in writing, you can step away from past judgments. And I think one of the big characteristics to create or look for as you're identifying staff who are going to be doing discovery is a willingness to see possibilities in people and to look beyond historical barriers and look instead about where would those barriers not be such an impediment to employment. And instead be able to reframe some of those barriers into how does that translate into a condition for success for this job seeker. And I think those are some of the bigger skills that we need as we're identifying folks to do discovery. The other piece is being able to capture information that we learn in a very factual, descriptive manner rather than observing very factual descriptive information and then writing it down with judgment again. Like, oh, he needs a one-to-one support with him forever. He's much slower than the average speed of somebody who would be stacking tires in this environment. He doesn't have the physical strength to do this. That information is not going to help me negotiate a position. What's going to help me is watching how somebody uses tools, how somebody gets work done if they, physically need some accommodations. That's the information that's going to be helpful to me. And then the next piece is really translating the information that we see and that we skills into contributions, into tasks that we can offer employers, and then also translating challenges into ideal conditions for success. The other piece is, as you're working, all of your agencies are looking at how do we move from segregated environments to community-based employment. Can we start training all of the staff in your agency in these skills so that as we're working with folks in a more traditional segregated setting, we're starting to gather some of this information, we're starting to come up with some theories about where this person would be more successful, where they could contribute more. Is it a physical characteristic of an environment? Is it the structure of a task? Is it the predictability of the flow of the task? But we can be doing discovery anytime we're with somebody in addition to when it's the billable service for voc rehab. And again, think about not everybody's going to need an intense level of discovery to go to work. They might just need adequate discovery. And that's going to come down to a judgment call with the voc rehab counselor and the employment services professional. And so here are just a couple resources for additional information around discovery and customized employment. There's Marc Gold Associates, Griffin Hammis, and Department of Labor with customized employment. So David, did you want to take questions now or wait till the end?
Ellen, let's wait till the end if we can, and we'll see what comes through.
Okay.
Ellen, thank you very much. I failed to mention when I introduced Ellen, but she also has worked as a contractor with Marc Gold Associates, and they've been recognized as one of the experts and leaders in a variety of different employment initiatives, and certainly have a wealth of knowledge about the customized employment strategies. I think every time I listen to a presentation on customized employment, I come away with something a little different, and I really like what Ellen emphasized with that you can't fail discovery. And if we can approach this as another opportunity to get to know our job candidates and our job seekers and families in a different manner, that can really be a positive, powerful tool, and to be able to spend time in environments where they're at their best. I think it gives us an opportunity to see the possibilities that we can envision with employment. So thank you, Ellen, and be thinking of questions. Shoot them off in a message on the message board, and we'll capture those and share them with Ellen and have a little dialogue today, or to be able to get back to you if we don't have time. We're going to transition over to, and I'll introduce Ashlea, and we're glad that Ashlea is back with us today and to share some of her experiences. So I'll turn it over to you, Ashlea.
Okay, thank you, David. I don't know if I'm back by popular demand or just because we ran out of time last round. But I just wanted to thank everyone for getting on the call today. My hope is that I can complement the fantastic information that was shared by Ellen, and really just wanted to share some experiences that we've learned at Candeo as one of the 6 pilot projects in learning about customized employment. Real briefly, I just put a slide up there that talks about the different services that Candeo offers. And then we'll just, as you can notice, I also use, this is not a brand new PowerPoint, it's the same PowerPoint as last time. one of the pieces I really wanted to talk about is the traditional approach, or typically how we think of finding employment, and how I feel like job development typically operates. And as we think about, as we're hiring new job developers into our organizations, as Ellen mentioned, you look for a job opportunity, whether that's on Career Builder, you fill out the application, you interview. And so also that's what people come into our organizations thinking, okay, as a job developer, this is what I'm going to do. Not necessarily the customized employment pieces and tools, such as discovery. And so a lot of times I think we find ourselves in this rut of job developer, meet job seeker. I'm going to ask you these questions to get to know you at a surface level, and then I'll look for places of employment on Career Builder. We fill out the application together, and so on and so on. And where I think that leads us oftentimes is sometimes the job seeker is in job development for 1, 2, even maybe 3 years. And that's not only frustrating for the job seeker, oftentimes it's frustrating for the job developer. And we keep going back and forth of filling out application rather than building that relationship, one, with the employer, but also with the job seeker. And utilizing discovery and the pieces that Ellen talked about really allow us to get to that next step, which is a more customized approach to employment. And that's where you really get to know the person on a level of where you get to know anybody else. An example that I use is one of the first times actually Ellen was with us, and we ended up having pizza at a family's house and learning about the job seeker. And that meeting was 3 hours long. And it's not about necessarily the provider or the job developer asking the questions. It's about going in and saying, tell me about who you are. Tell me about the things that you like to do. And you let the conversation flow, or that smooth listening where you're really just taking it all in and getting to know who this person is. And the pieces of information that you learn, you don't necessarily know where that's going to take you yet. But you start thinking about, okay, well, during this time we learned that, Abby likes to flip pancakes, or maybe you learn that the one thing that she does completely independently on her own every single day is feeding the fish. And so then you say, okay, well, maybe I want to observe these things. So you're really, if you're listening to that conversation and taking all those pieces in, it's identifying where is this person at their best. And maybe that's not at home. Maybe. Can you guys still hear me? I just had a little thing come up. But
yeah, you're fine.
Okay, excellent. So it's maybe picking out those pieces, and really it's not judging a person or judging a book by its cover. The other day I used the analogy of it's kind of like peeling back an onion and seeing the different layers of who this person is. And if you think about yourself, think about where you're at your best. Is that necessarily going to someone's office and sitting across the table and talking about yourself? Or is it the environment that you're in? And so it also is a great way to build rapport with family, to build a relationship with that job seeker and that level of trust. So discovery really drives all of the next pieces because you soak up that information in a different way rather than sitting across the table and asking questions. The next piece that was really has been an essential component for Candeo is utilizing the employment planning meeting. So while you're doing discovery and you're getting to know someone, and again, this isn't just going to their house and having a 3-hour conversation, it's going to where they're at their best. That's the 3-hour conversation that gets you started, and then maybe it's 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 hours of really getting to know someone before you even get to job development. And it's that initial meeting should drive where you want to observe a person, and really where is that place that's familiar, that's completely, this person is at their best, and then what's an environment where maybe it's something new, and then you can kind of see, well, how does this person respond in a new environment, but that's somewhat familiar. So then that really leads to the employment planning meeting. And one of the coolest things about the employment planning meeting is that the job seeker has complete and entire ownership over this meeting. They're the director of their meeting, and they're encouraged to invite more unpaid professionals in their life than paid professionals. And from my family member perspective, this is so valuable to really bring together the people at the table that know this person at their best. And I know that not everyone may come with family members and friends to the table. Maybe they just moved to the state. So that can also be the SPL provider. It can be a variety of people who really know this person at their best. And then, the case manager could be there, the voc rehab counselor, the employment provider. But as you go through all of those pieces that Ellen talked about, where you identify those ideal conditions, you really display all of these pieces that's really going to drive job development at the employment planning meeting. And by the end of the meeting, and you don't go more than 2 hours, or 2.5 at most, but by the end of the meeting, you've identified who are the warm contacts of who knows this person, who's in their network. So then as the job developer, you're not necessarily going out and making those cold calls, you're utilizing warm contacts. And it's not going to them and saying, oh, well, you're going to give Joe a job. Maybe it's an informational interview. Maybe it's asking, how does Joe get his foot in the door in this line of work? And then that's really where it takes you to all of these different pieces and components that lead to the job. And then the one thing that Candeo really took out of it is the customized piece is the negotiation of the job. So that's where that customized piece really comes into play. And you don't start job development until the employment planning meeting. And then everyone who leaves that meeting has a very clear picture of what job development is going to look like, rather than we're just going to look for job openings and fill out applications. So at Candeo, we participated in year 1 of the Employment First Grant, being one of the 6 pilot projects. And then this year, we're really trying to focus on how do we engage our entire supported employment team in learning about customized employment. And so we've been utilizing all of those resources that Ellen mentioned from Department of Labor, using the Marc Gold Associates model, reading books from Griffin and Hamas, and then really walking our team through that collaboratively and saying, okay, where can we use different tools and strategies to ensure that we are providing the most trusted service and also being creative in our job development. So, as Ellen mentioned, discovery may look different for everyone, and it's also you can use different tools in different ways. So when we think about traditional job development, one of the job seekers that Jenna had the opportunity to work with, and Jenna's kind of our expert internally at Candeo on customized employment, but she had already been working with a job seeker prior to our involvement in the grant. And so she had an idea of who this person was, but then she was able to take different pieces of, oh, well, I didn't think about that, so maybe I want to observe that individual in a different environment. Or maybe it's utilizing a visual resume rather than a paper resume, but then they still meet the traditional labor market approach of filling that job description. So maybe it's not necessarily a customized position, but you're able to use different techniques and of getting to know someone and really making, supporting that solid job match. Another way is maybe you really have a good idea of who a person is, but you're just not quite sure where job development is headed. You know that maybe they want to look for a certain career field, but you're having a difficult time with connections. The employment planning meeting is a great way to pull the team together and look at who around the entire table knows someone in that line of work that they're looking for. Or maybe they have a couple of different themes, similar to the Griffin and Hamas model, where you look at, okay, this person's interested in different career paths. And so really it's being creative and looking at how can we use a collaborative way of supporting this job seeker rather than just job developer and job seeker. So then maybe from the employment planning meeting, you come away with all of these warm contacts for different employers, and you start the conversation with the employer who is the mother's best friend's sister who owns a local business. And you get the conversation started there. And then from there they say, okay, well, talk to my best friend who owns this company, and actually the job is posted online and you already know that that person's going to be a great fit and meets the job description. So really it's building different ways to look at job development. And again, there's no failing discovery, but discovery really, I think, is the foundation that leads to all of the pieces that we're talking about. So I wanted to talk about a couple of different examples because I think that helps make it real. One of the job seekers that we've had the opportunity to work with is a young professional named Jim. And Jim works at a company called Stelter Company here in Des Moines. And Jim actually sought out Candeo and said, hey, I've done the networking piece already. I'm coming to you with the employer that I've already built a relationship with, but we just need some help in identifying different job opportunities within the company of where things can be customized. So they actually came to us and said, help us customize, but he had the warm contact already. And so from there, Jenna spent some time at the business, spent time with managers, had conversations, did observations. And so from there, he operates a punch press and prepares paperwork. He's created different ways to help the workflow at Stelter and increase revenue while he's at it. But now he's part of the holiday planning committee. He also used a contact that Stelter Company had to increase his hours, which Stelter works with a company called Color Effects, so he leveraged that and then developed himself a position over at Color Effects. So now he works 5 days a week, and every piece was connected to the next. So without Stelter, Color Effects wouldn't have happened. And so overall, he improves the customer service and workflow at that company. But just a great example of, I think, using all of those different tools so that Jim's already on his way in his career. Another individual that we've had the opportunity to support is a woman named Dee Dee. And Dee Dee works at Panera. She has the most contagious personality, and she greets customers, she maintains the dining area. If it's your birthday, she'll come sing you happy birthday. She increases revenue at that place just by her personality and the customer service that she delivers every day. But the job developer who was working with her, the struggle came in that there wasn't necessarily a job description, but we knew that Dee Dee could contribute and really make a difference for a business. But it wasn't something that she could just fill out the application for, walk in, and interview for the position. And so this job developer took months and months of developing a relationship. It wasn't just going in. It was conversation after conversation, following up, maybe taking them some swag, which is stuff we all get. So maybe that's candy or a cup of coffee or something to keep that relationship going. And so after 6 months of cultivating this relationship and conversations, the job developer submitted a proposal, talked about different ways that Dee Dee could contribute to their business. And so now Dee Dee has been working there for years. She works 20 hours a week, and because of her position, they've realized that this position is a benefit for many stores. And so because of her contributions, there are other stores that have created this same position within their stores to help build revenue and customer service. Another story is a young man named Nick. Nick is a young professional who works at the surgery center, and he came to us seeking out employment supports, but again, he brought his own contacts where his mom was the warm contact at the surgery center. And so it wasn't necessarily mom coming up with the position, but it was connecting us to the right people to facilitate those conversations, and then really using those relationship building skills to cultivate that, and then to also customize the position around who he is and his contributions. So we have time for questions, run to the end of the slide, but really I think the biggest piece is Customize offers different tools that help streamline the process. Again, with discovery, it's getting to know someone where they're at their best. So it's taking away that form or questionnaire and really getting to know someone how you would get to know anybody you run into. Are there pictures on the wall? Who are your siblings? Oh, was that a family vacation? Tell me about that. What are the things that you do at home? Tell me about your day. But really, your questions diminish once they start talking about who they are. And then from there, you identify, okay, I really want to see this individual doing A, B, and C. It takes a lot of time. This is not necessarily the easiest way to go about it, because filling out the application, submitting it, and looking for jobs online is a much easier way. But the time that's invested into discovery and really getting to know who someone is drives the entire process, and the outcome is so much better. And it does make a difference. And I know that as we continue to talk about all of these different steps and connecting with job seekers, taking time for the employment planning meeting, observing in different environments, that all of that does take funding as well. So it's looking at different ways that we can braid and blend funding. Voc Rehab has a fantastic sheet called the Employment Support and Planning Evolution, and that also guides how can we use Medicaid and how can we use VR, and then ensuring that all of the players are at the table and having conversations with that Voc Rehab counselor, one, to identify the need, but also to say, hey, would it be possible if we used this decode and this decode to be able to do a couple of different job shadows, or using discovery so that you can have the opportunity to see a person in a different environment, or have that conversation at home or at school or wherever that person is at their best. And then even is Candeo piloted customized employment. One of the pieces that we used was also our county dollars. And so our county, now a region, may be able to provide additional supports as well. So I know that as a provider, we all think of that funding piece, and so I just encourage everyone to continue those conversations about different ways to use and braid and blend funding to ensure that we can provide different types of career supports. And that wraps things up for me. Back to you, David.
Ashley, thank you very much. I think you can tell from the conversations today that we're getting into the meat of what we are hoping to do with the community of practice calls. We've kind of laid a foundation up to this point, and now we're kind of digging a little deeper into the weeds and talking about some of the different strategies of customized employment and how it can result in outcomes for the job candidates we're serving. Just as a foreshadowing of things to come, on July 29th, our next webinar will be Abby Cooper. Abby is a business owner from the state of Washington, and she'll be sharing a little bit more information about person-centered planning, individual planning, integrating discovery into that process, and how do we maintain focus on the individual, as well as looking at some strategies to ensure that we're following up with discovery as it relates to the employment planning and goal-setting process. And then on August 19th, one of Ellen's colleagues, Mike Callahan from Marc Gold Associates, will share information on staff development and what we need to do as agencies to ensure effective staff development as it relates to customized employment strategies. Then the last 2 sessions of our Iowa community practice are scheduled for September 30th and October 28th. And we go back to the state of Washington and have a business owner that will be sharing specific techniques related to their experience in business sales, working with businesses, business development, how we leverage those resources to get into the door and meet business needs. One of the questions that have come up, and I think this will be good maybe for both Ashlea and Ellen to take a crack at, but it gets at, for businesses and employers as we're making those connections, businesses don't necessarily understand the terminology of customized employment and supported employment and negotiation. I think they do understand their business needs, but what strategies can you share, both of you, in terms of how do you get this out on a topic with businesses? Do you go in sharing vocabulary related to customized employment negotiation, or what have you found to be successful in getting businesses to talk with you and getting those connections developed?
David, that was a great way to set up that question, because I think, part of the comment in the question is that customized employment is a foreign terminology to employers, and it is. The idea of getting some of their needs met that aren't currently getting met, that part isn't foreign. And so what I do is I may use the term customized employment, but how I approach employers is say that, part of what I do is I help people find employment by meeting needs of businesses that help them do their work more efficiently. And so part of what I explain to business is that I'm not looking for job openings. What I want to do is see if my service can help them look at ways to get things done within their company that aren't getting done but need to get done, or get things done more cost effectively, or just enhance their service some way. And so as I'm going into employers, I'm offering them that service, and they also know that I do represent job seekers with disabilities. And so I do need to educate them that I'm not looking for a job opening. I'm first having a conversation about what they need.
Ellen, are you, as you're talking about that, what kind of pops into my mind is you're doing discovery with the business, that you're discovering their business needs and the way they work and what issues and strengths and weaknesses they have, discovering how you might be a resource to them, and then at some point you can mix and match those resources with job candidates and needs and tasks.
Exactly. I really need to do discovery on the business to identify what they value, what they need, how my job seeker could benefit their bottom line. And I am either at a business because I just want more information about that industry, or I'm at a particular business representing a particular job seeker. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I know you are so good off the cuff here, so I'm going to pick on you with another hypothetical question, because I've heard you do this before, and I'm always amazed how quick you think on your feet. So I'm setting you up, so don't fail me on this. But could you give us an example if you walk down the street to the Walgreens, and you've never been into the Walgreens store, but you kind of have a person in the back of your mind that has some interest, and you're walking in and you introduce yourself to the store manager. What would your initial 1-minute elevator speech spiel sound like in that situation?
Okay. Well, and actually I wouldn't go in off the street. Ideally, I would want that person expecting me. And
Great.
So I'll give you an example, because I actually have a job development call in an hour, but it's my second call. And I'm working with a young man who is fascinated with transportation. And so I went to my boss and I said, who do you know who's connected in Missoula in transportation. And he said, well, I'm having a meeting with the director of Mountain Line Public Transit next Monday. And I said, great, get me a meeting with him. And so he emailed me and said, Michael Treat wants to talk to you, give him a call. So I used his name. I said, you know, you were on a committee with my executive director, Marty Blair. I want to set up a time to talk with you about a way that I might be able to meet some of Mountain Line's needs. Could we set up a meeting? And so we set up a meeting. I walked in and basically said, I'm with the Rural Institute. I work with people with disabilities who are searching for employment, and I do that by identifying ways that they can enhance business needs. So that's my quick version. He doesn't need to understand voc rehab. He doesn't need to understand BR. I may or may not use the term customized employment. That's just my quick 30 seconds. From there, what I want to tell him, because I'm in this meeting with him, is that I'm not looking for job openings. I'm looking for tasks that don't get done, that need to get done, tasks that could be done more cost effectively by somebody else, or a service that might enhance the business. I've also gone on the internet and Googled the business to see, you know, what's something really important to them. And right now, getting information out about their direct routes, how you know, you can access the campus through these direct routes, how you can like avoid congestion. It's all about promoting this. So we did that meeting, we did a tour, and then in an hour we're going back to meet with the chief financial officer and the executive director again to talk more, because we identified tasks, but they're not meeting my job seeker. They're actually cleaning up the buses, and it happens at about 3:30, and Ian is best in the morning, although he'd probably love to be on the bus. I'm not sure that's where he's going to be at his best. So we're looking more at some clerical things within the main office. If this doesn't work out for Ian today, then I'm going to ask for a connection into Montana Rail Link and any other sources of transportation businesses. And then also the job developer who's going with me is also going to look at, she's got other job seekers who would kill to clean the buses.
Perfect. Great examples, and really hit home on how we're looking at unmet needs of the business and leveraging our connections. And I think, you know, you had mentioned earlier that sometimes it's several visits to build those connections and relationships, and that there's other strategies to get in the door than just walking off the street, but to build on whatever connections we can get to get into the door and establish some interest. And again, making sure we approach it from a discovery of the business need standpoint. So a number of great strategies with that. Ashlea and Ellen, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. With that, Jessica, I will turn it over to you for final comments.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks again, Ellen and Ashlea. I just want to encourage everybody to please participate in the poll questions. We'd love to have your feedback, and we definitely pay attention to that as we plan future webinars. Presentations are available in the left-hand corner, but I'll also send those out to you through email before the week's over, as well as share with you the document that Ashlea referenced, the Employment Support Planning Evolution. I'll be sure to send you the link. So I think that's it for today, and we appreciate having all of you here, and we'll see you in July. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ellen.